As we continue with our Bible teaching series in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, may I read with you the first 5 verses, and I've put that heading, or this heading, over this section, Marriage and Devotion. It says this: "Now concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and every woman have her own husband. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife hath not power of her own body, but the husband. Likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. Defraud not ye not one the other, except it be with consent for a time, that ye may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, that Satan tempt you not for your incontinency." This is a very serious section and very important one for Christians to consider, so that they can maintain a good and healthy marriage. We're not going to deal with all of those 5 verses in one session, because it's a very important passage of Scripture and one that needs to be considered carefully. But listen to what it says. "Now concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me." Now the Apostle Paul, when he's writing to the church in Corinth, he deals with issues that have been brought to his attention. He also deals with issues that they have asked him about, and this is one of them. They wrote to him about this, and he really is dealing with this very delicate subject of sexual activity. But you'll notice what it does here. It makes it very clear that sexual activity is the preserve and the reserve of marriage. It says, "Concerning the things which whereof you wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman." In other words, we're going to learn as you go through this passage, and actually when you get towards the end of it, that Paul is teaching that there is an advantage to the single life. Now that's a topic that isn't always dealt with. He is going to talk about his dedication to serving God, and that he feels that marriage would get in the way if he were to be married. Now Paul was either single or a widower, but as far as we know, he's single from these passages of Scripture. And he makes it very clear at the end of this section that it would be an advantage, as far as he was concerned, to be able to dedicate his time to serving God without the distractions and the appropriate responsibilities that go with marriage. But he does acknowledge that there is a sex drive in human beings. There is a desire for physical relationship. That is God-given. I have to make that very, very clear. It is not sinful. This is one of the things that we need to be clear about in Scripture. Certain acts and behaviours are sinful in certain circumstances, but not sinful in others. You go into a shop and you take something off the shelf. That would be theft. That would be theft to take something that didn't belong to you. But if you own that shop and you take something off the shelf, it's the same action, but in one circumstance it's sin. It's theft because you don't own it. In the other circumstance, it's your right to do what you want with it. Sex and sexual activity is absolutely pure and right within marriage. Now, I must qualify that. You must be loving and caring and considerate and not overbearing and not forceful, even within marriage. You don't have rights to be dominant and hurtful. The section we've read talks about considering one another, and the wife has ownership of her husband's body, the husband has ownership of his wife's body. But remember that the Scripture teaches the husband loves his wife as Christ loved the church, and the wife she respects, she submits to, she owns the leadership that God has given to the man. And when those things are working in the way God intended, then there is mutual care and love and concern. But Paul is saying at the beginning of this section, it's good for a man not to touch a woman. In other words, it would be better to abstain from sexual activity. Of course, that's within marriage, but he's saying to avoid fornication, to avoid sexual activity that is sinful. Let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Now we'll go to deal with verses 3 and beyond in the next video teaching recording, but in this section it's the ownership. There's possessiveness. There is a jealousy that is correct within marriage. I mean that in the sense that you carefully care for and protect and preserve your wife, your husband. You love each other. You have your own husband, you have your own wife, and you dedicate yourselves to each other. You love each other exclusively. You do not get involved in other sexual activity with other people outside of your marriage relationship. You are uniquely one for the other. Trust God bless us as we consider these truths together.